Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are. Today, we are going to talk about Dylan Blaha. The man is a former officer in the military, and apparently he is running for Congress. Although his message is a little crazed. Let's go ahead and go here. This is an official statement that has been put out either by him or by his campaign. And let's go ahead and read this. It is a statement on President Trump's illegal attacks on Venezuela. So this is from Champaign, Illinois. It says that he deployed to Afghanistan in the United States Army from 2019 to 2020. So, thank him for that. He's a veteran. I've seen the results of American military imperialism firsthand. I find that very odd. America, while we jokingly say that we are an empire, there is no imperialism going on. I'd like him to go ahead and prove that instead of simply saying it, throwing it around like it's a term that, really is just a buzzword. As a medical operations officer, I saw the human cost of war. That's fairly understandable. Today, I stand against the U.S. military imperialism and colonialism around the world. Would also like to point out, when is the United States ever a colonial power? Ever. The British Empire was a colonial power. The Spanish Empire was a colonial power. The United States has never been a colonial power. This morning, President Donald Trump launched an illegal assault on the sovereign nation of Venezuela and kidnapped Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan president. It is not illegal, not in the slightest sense. I guess you could say it is illegal per international law, but international law doesn't matter, especially considering that you have to have it enforced, and international law is not enforceable, especially when you take into account the fact that the United States is actually the country that enforces the UN and the international laws. So that's kind of bunk. Continuing, Trump once again has shown his contempt for the U.S. Constitution and international law. The President of the United States does not have the right to unilaterally take our country to war. Now, this is a fallacious statement. The President of the country, correct, does not have the right to unilaterally take the country to war, but that's not what he did. Trump authorized an action for the military to go and take out essentially a drug lord who was in charge of a country. That did happen to be the president of another country, but he was a drug lord. He was indicted already in the United States. He already had sanctions on the country of Venezuela. We'll get into that in a few minutes, but it is absolutely fallacious to say that he was taking us to war. We are not at war. We are not in war. He is correct to say that the president doesn't have the right to take the country to war. Congress is who declares war. That's the only correct thing that he even said. But we're not in war. This is not about drug trafficking or preserving democracy. This is about Venezuelan oil and dominating Latin America. The United States does not have the right to run Venezuela, as Trump stated this morning. That's absolutely correct. And that is what Trump said. And I believe only the same day, since the operation happened, I believe in the middle of the night, so I believe it was early the next day, there were reports already coming out that Machado was slated to take over. Machado, the one who was supposed to win the last election with an overwhelming, I believe, I could be wrong, I believe it was 80 some odd percent, and then Maduro just all of a sudden won the election and then suspended all elections. So you have that. I don't believe it's about Venezuelan oil and the domination of Latin America. If that was correct, that would be considered high crimes and misdemeanors, I believe, and Congress would probably impeach him right fast and in a hurry, especially considering the amount of Democrats that are seated at the Senate and in the House. But I haven't heard anything about that in the last few days. So I find that hilarious. There have been no calls. I haven't heard anything about it, although they have been threatening to impeach him for the last, year anyway, since he was elected, on and off. So there's that. Congress was to immediately pass a war powers resolution to end this military operation. There is no continuing military operation. It was done. They went in, they dropped some bombs, they grabbed him, and they came home. There is no continuing military operation, as far as we are all aware. I guess it is possible that there is some covert operations going on. That's probably true all around the world and from multiple different countries besides the United States. But from what we understand, there is no ongoing military operation in Venezuela. And I'm willing to be corrected if I'm wrong. Donald Trump's attacks on Venezuela also make the U.S. less safe. This violation of international law opens the door for any nation to attack another country for resources or regime change. Okay, first off, that is what all countries do regardless. Do you not understand the three main reasons why people attack other people? I was taught very early in middle school is for the three G's: God, gold, and ground. That doesn't necessarily mean God, of course. It simply means religion. One group will attack another group because of differing religions. That's number one. Number two, gold. That, of course, doesn't mean gold. It means resources, whether that's minerals, diamonds, wood, coal, water. if there's if you're in a desert country, and of course you need a source of water, any sort of a resource that you can use, one group of people will attack another in order to obtain it, if they cannot or don't feel like bartering for it or trading. And then, of course, ground. Ground, of course, does also lead into the resources one. However, ground is simply more land. One group will attack another one simply to take over their land so that they can have another place to expand into. Those are the three G's, the three main reasons why one group of people will attack another one. It's the main reason why one group or one country will attack another country. So now we go into, it is the same logic Putin used to justify horrific attacks on Ukraine. No, it's not. Putin's actual logic is Ukraine belongs to Russia, and he is taking it back. Technically, it's the third G, ground, land, but it's the fact that he's using the logic that it was already theirs, it belongs to them, and he's simply taking it back. It has nothing to do with regime change, unless you want to really go into the nuance of the fact that Ukraine has their own government, and so they're going to subsume that government under Russia. If you want to go into that, okay, sure. But then you also have its country's resources. Okay, Ukraine does have resources, all the wheat that they provide. Okay, yes, that country has that resource. But again, Putin's actual justification that he claims, and of course he could be lying, I understand that, is the fact that Ukraine was part of Russia, the USSR, and so he wants to take it back. Trump's regime has openly spoken about controlling Venezuela's oil reserves, which are the largest in the world. That's a yes and a no. That's the largest known reserves, and I believe the OPEC countries are pretty much right behind them anyway, so it's not as if they are the largest by a wide margin, so that's kind of neither here nor there, and that was just really thrown in there as an excuse, or one more point of Trump wants the oil, so whatever. This is imperialism, plain and simple. Again, no, it's not. If it was imperialism, we would have gone in there and invaded the entire country rather than taken just their leader. It must be condemned by leaders across the democratic world as I condemn it now. Okay, there is no democratic world. First off, again, we as the United States are not a democratic country. We are a constitutional republic that has democratic principles. There is no country in the entire world that is democratic. None of them. Great Britain, the UK, they use a parliamentary system. They're not democratic. There is no single democratic country in the world. It is time to cut the defense budget and invest in American communities. It's time to provide Medicare for all and living wages. And here's his pitch for why you should vote for him. Besides, Orange Mad bad, he do bad thing, I don't like him, you vote for me. So he wants to provide Medicare for all and living wages, which I'm going to assume is going to be some kind of universal base income, the UBI. It's time to become a leader in peace, diplomacy, and humanitarian aid. No more war. That last line is also absolutely stupid. No more war. No offense, Dylan or Blah. I'm honestly not sure how to pronounce that. No more war is a bullshit utopian view. Wars will always happen as long as people are different from one another, regardless. So sorry about that. Here we're going to go to just a basic search. I have to put in, was Venezuela blocking oil tankers? Prior to Nicolas Maduro's capture, the Venezuelan Navy had received orders to escort oil tankers, which heightened the tensions in the Caribbean among a U.S. blockade aimed at Venezuelan oil exports. So we were blockading their oil exports. And the reason why is because we had been monitoring and considering actions against sanctioned Venezuelan tankers as part of its strategy to disrupt the economy. Okay. Now, in December of 25, President Donald Trump ordered U.S. naval ships to block the entry and exit of sanctioned Venezuelan oil tankers. Well, that's a part that we need to understand. I'm sure a lot of people don't understand is the fact that there have been sanctions on Venezuela since 2005. Let's go over here. Why was Venezuelan oil sanctioned? It was sanctioned primarily due to the actions of Maduro's government, which had been accused of human rights abuse, corruption, and undermining democratic processes. That goes back to, as I said, he won the last election when he, by all polling data and everything else available, should not have, and then he stopped doing elections. The sanctions were aimed to cut the regime's access to financial resources, particularly from oil exports, which are crucial for its survival and operations. Now, I wasn't going to go to hometreasury.gov, since some people might say that that's a little biased. I went to globalsanctions.com and pulled up this. This is regimes in Venezuela. This is an overview. The UN does not currently have any sanctions. However, the EU has sanctions on them since 2017 in response to the deterioration of democracy, rule of law, and human rights in Venezuela. And these are still in place: an arms embargo, travel restrictions, and asset freezing measures on those responsible for serious human rights violations or abuses, and the repression of civil society and democratic opposition, and those whose actions, policies, or activities otherwise undermine democracy or the rule of law in Venezuela, by Council Regulation 2017 to 2063 and Council Decision 2017-2074. Now, the UK also has sanctions. They are Venezuela Regulations 2019, an arms embargo, asset freezes, and travel bans. Now, the US first imposed Venezuela's sanctions in 2005 in response to Venezuela's absence of cooperation with U.S. anti-drug and counterterrorism efforts. Now, remember, that was when Bush was in office. That's 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago. Since then, the U.S. has made annual determinations that Venezuela has failed to adhere to its commitments under international narcotics and anti-terrorism agreements. For those of you who are not understanding, the U.S. has made annual determinations. That means every year since 2005, they have determined this. That includes the rest of Bush. That includes all 8 years of Obama, all 4 years of Trump's first, and all 4 years of Biden, just in case anybody wasn't sure. In 2015, the Obama administration issued Executive Order 13692, which targets, for asset blocking and visa restrictions, people and entities involved in human rights abuses and corruption. Obama added on people and entities involved in human rights abuses and corruption. Government figures, including President Nicolas Maduro, were sanctioned in 2017. So that's after the 2015 government figures, including Maduro, were personally sanctioned in 2017. The U.S. issued further EOs in 2018 and 19, which prohibited access to the U.S. financial markets and blocked the property and interests of the Maduro government in the United States within the control of U.S. persons. The U.S. has issued Venezuela-related licenses and revoked licenses enabling oil businesses in Venezuela in March 25. Since April 25, any country that imports Venezuelan oil may be subject to a 25% tariff on its exports in the U.S. Now, here's more recent. December 25, the U.S. seized 2 oil tankers off the coast of Venezuela and ordered a blockade of sanctioned vessels traveling to and from Venezuela. And then, of course, in January, Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, were brought to the U.S. to face their narco-terrorism charges. That is the reason why they were captured. Narco-terrorism charges. They were already charged and indicted here in the United States, and Trump went and got them. That is the entire reason for their capture. It has nothing to do with oil, officially, of course. I mean, people can always contemplate on that, but officially, it is for narco-terrorism. All right, I just want to go ahead and go over that real quick since people are flinging around things like oil, especially Mr. Blaha over here. I'm just going to call him Blaha. But yeah, that's about all I've got for you today. That's all I'm going to say about that for now. I apologize for my voice, just getting it back after a bout of sickness. But if you could do me the favor, if you've made it this far, of giving me a like and subscribe, they cost you nothing. Thank you. You have a great day.